Thanks a lot. Okay, it's working. Well, hi everyone. So I haven't actually prepared anything because I thought what we'd do and would be useful would be to have just a bit more of a conversation. I don't like really the idea of just sitting up here and just putting a slide together. I don't necessarily know what you need to know and what you'd like to know, and I know there's quite a lot of you. So I felt that it'd probably be best if we almost do it a bit like a conversation. So there is time for questions at the end, but if anybody wants to interrupt me and ask a question, then feel free. Um, but a bit about my background anyway. So I've been in marketing for 15 years now. I started out more as a writer, really. I started out as a copywriter, and mainly working in agencies, so agency side. Um, and I ended up becoming head of content at a large agency in Manchester, um, but didn't want to just focus on content completely. So I did branch out a little bit and ended up becoming head of digital marketing there, and then a board director at the agency too. So that was my kind of in-house, my agency life, and that was for about 9 years in total. And then I decided to go in-house. So what Dan mentioned before was I've been working over the last few years in-house as kind of head of marketing for a global kind of golf brand, and then most recently head of brand and campaigns at a global sports tourism brand, sports travel brand. Um, but in the middle of this year, decided to go freelance as well. So at the minute, I'm doing freelance consultancy alongside my position as head of brand and campaigns. But slowly and but surely, I'm moving towards being more of a full-time consultant, freelance. So that's my background. So really, I've had a mix of in-house and agency experience. I've specialized in certain disciplines, but then I've also branched out to become more of an all-rounder. So I've got quite a lot of experience in both. I've managed quite a lot of people over my time as well. And with when you're kind of head of marketing or on the board, obviously you get some nice insights into the commercial side of how businesses are run. You get good access to the CEOs and the founders of the world. So thankfully, over the last 15 years, really, I've had a really nice insight into business as a whole, and it's been a lot of fun. So um, what I thought I would talk to you about anyway, when I was trying to think about what might be interesting for you, I know you're all at different stages of your journey and you've got different backgrounds. I thought what might be useful, hopefully, would be to talk to you a bit about just some of the biggest things that I've learned over the 15 years, some of the things that I wish I'd have known sooner. And a lot of this stuff as well is stuff I've only just figured out as well. When I've started my freelance business, a lot of this is stuff that I've reflected on myself, and it's only just occurred to me recently. So it's quite fresh in my mind. But that said, it's still useful for you guys, I think, regardless of where you are on your journey. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Like I said, I haven't put a slide together, so I'm just going to talk and you interrupt whenever you like, if that's okay. But save questions for the end as well, if you like, as well. Um, is that okay? Dan, is that all right with you?
And that'd be perfect.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So I think the first thing, again, it's funny because I started out as a copywriter, started out in the world of content. I started out really as like a journalist, to be honest, but it's still only occurred to me fairly recently that this thing was something that companies and marketers could do a lot better, and what I myself could do a lot better. And it's making the customer the hero of your story. So if you spend 5 minutes going on any kind of website for any company, you'll find loads of examples where they're just talking about themselves and they're positioning themselves as the hero of the story for the customer. And it's all about, we've got 10 years experience doing this, we've got the best proprietary software, we've got this, that, and the other, and it's all we. And they very rarely talk about, you know, you are the hero of our story and we're just the guide. How can we do that for you? And it's interesting. I read a book called, and I'd recommend it to anyone if you haven't read it already, by Donald Miller, called Building a Story Brand. And that opens your eyes to why making the consumer the hero of the story is really powerful thing to do. And it's because we as people, we see our lives through the lens of a protagonist, whether main character in our own stories, and that's why we use stories to understand the world, and that's why we spend hours and hours, reading, watching TV, watching films, and things like that. And really, marketing's got to be an extension of that. We've got to be able to tap into that as marketers and make sure we can tell people this is why my brand should be a part of your story. This is what you're going to get out of it. If you can help us be a guide in your story, this is what you can get out of it. And that it's quite a subtle shift in mindset. But it's one that I've noticed just so many companies, both in-house and again, agency side, they they're just not ready to do that. They just don't realize that that's the most powerful way to get people emotionally connected with your brand, really. So that's one of the first things that I would say to anyone at any point is understand that as marketers, we've really got to make the customer the hero of the story, and it's not about us, it's about them. Um, and as a result, that means that you have to really understand your customer really well, more than just on a superficial level. You've really got to understand what their emotional needs are, what their emotional motivations are for doing anything. Like I work in the golf travel industry now, and yeah, I sell golf holidays, but at a very deep emotional level, what I'm selling people is the chance to connect with their best friends and their loved ones. It's the chance to experience these once in a lifetime experiences with their most cherished friends that they might have lost touch with. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to be connecting with rather than just saying, oh, we can sell you a golf holiday. Here you go. Um, that's not why people are really buying golf holidays, just to go and play golf. They want to spend time with their loved ones. Um, and it's what that deep root cause is for anybody doing anything that we need to think about. Um, so that's the first thing I would say anyway. And I put that first just because I think that's really important. I probably might not get time to get to other things, but that's quite an important thing, I'd say. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that one at all.
I wanted to ask Graham. So you said you started as a copywriter,
Yes.
and how, I don't know if I missed it, but how did you get into, your journey finding your way into the niche, which is golf travel?
So yeah, I started out as a copywriter and I ended up working in an agency. So I worked on lots of clients, but B2C an agency. So that could be in any industry. Like we had all kinds of wild and wonderful clients from drainage contractors to um, legal firms to recruitment firms to fashion companies, basically anything you can think of, I might have to write about. Um, and over time, I got more involved in the strategy side of things. So not just writing stuff and being told what to write, but I would start thinking about, well, this is what we should write, and this is why it is. And so I got more involved in the strategy, and in the end, ended up telling other people in my team, this is what we should be doing. So just over time, generally, I took on more responsibility. And I'm a golfer. I'm not a very good golfer, but I'm okay. I'm okay. I enjoy it. And an opportunity came up later down the line where um, yeah, I saw the opportunity and I thought I'd go for it. But it's still moving from agency to in-house. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. It can be quite daunting because you wonder whether you've got enough experience in that thing. Because as an agency, when you're working as an agency, you're used to having you don't have complete knowledge of every company that you can work on. It's just impossible to have the time. So putting all your eggs in that basket and working just on one thing can be a bit daunting. But um, I also think like I'd recommend working in an agency to anyone really because it you develop this ability to very quickly understand markets and audiences and clients and the customer's needs. And when you can apply that to going in-house later on, you're really well equipped to do it, basically, because you can go really deep into it. So I don't know if that answers your question really, but
Yeah,
I
for
gen
yeah.
I just got more experience in copywriting. Really, the main thing that got me that opportunity was that I eventually took on more responsibility across digital marketing as a whole, not just in copywriting, um, which was a bit lucky, to be honest.
Do you have any anecdotes to share working with agencies and working in-house?
Uh,
Anything interesting that you've
yeah,
seen in the past?
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I've got plenty of anecdotes. I don't know how many of them are professionally enough for this setting, but no, I think the main thing for me, the big difference is that with in-house, you can. I mean, when I was working in agency, the opportunity, if I'd have had the opportunity to spend 5 days a week just working on one brand and really getting under the hood of it, that would have just been crazy. That just wouldn't have happened. Um, so the big difference to me is just the time and energy you can put into truly understanding the audience that you're trying to connect with and the company and the business model and everything about it. I'd say that's the biggest thing really. Um, a lot of with an agency, a lot of it is account management and things like that. So you have to have really good client relationship skills. Very different, but yeah, the transferable skills you get from being in an agency are huge when you go in house, if that's what you decide to do or what you can do.
I don't know if you have access to the chats, but there's a couple of questions there.
Oh, I've just seen it. Yeah. Let me see. What have we got? Nicola, I agree that customers should be at the heart of your brand story. However, I often think this is hard to do in B2B. Do you agree? Do you think that B2B are more logical slash rational buyers, or do we still need to build a story? I think we need to build a story all the time. I think B2B, it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, you still have a core motivation for doing something that you can tap into. So, for instance, I'm working with a design company at the minute that offers design services for HR professionals. And there's still a really clear story there to me. Um, the job market is changing massively. There's huge challenges for HR professionals to keep up with. I've seen something about GPT there. There's AI that's affecting the workforce. There's all of these things that's making their life very uncertain. And as people, we need to understand that they have insecurities and they have worries and they have people that they want to impress inside the company. And it's that kind of thing that you can tap into. That is, when you wake up and you go to work, there's lots of things that you'll be thinking about and you'll be worried about. Oh, does my boss think I'm any good? There's lots of things that, you spend 7, 8, 9, 10, however many hours a day working for these companies. A lot of people, their professional lives take up more of their headspace than their personal lives. So there is definitely a story there that we can connect with. If there is an emotional need, or there's worries, or there's desires, or needs, or ambitions, whether that's personally or professionally, we can we need to use them in our storytelling because that's the only way we're going to connect to the real root cause why they want to do anything. The HR professional doesn't want to buy design services to have a nice website. They want to buy design services so that they can tell their boss that they did a really good job and they can feel good and they can feel important within the company. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's still a story there. Bit of a ramble. Sorry. The other question was, does ChatGPT affect your job as a copywriter? I think that there's loads of talk about this at the minute, and there is, for some, you know, in some cases, worry about that just because the output on the surface looks pretty good from ChatGPT. But it's the same as anything I'd say is that can never replace the experience that you've got as a person. And when you're a copywriter, like I'm talking about now, you're trying to connect on an emotional level with people. No machine is going to be able to do that as well as a human. I'd always say that. So I think ChatGPT can be quite good, I think, for things like helping you plan or helping you brainstorm or helping you structure content. But I'd never rely on it to do the writing because I just would worry that it just wouldn't connect well enough with the people that we're trying to connect to because it just doesn't understand, the depth and range of kind of human emotions that we do. But let's see what happens with it. We've also got how easy would it be to go from in-house to an agency? Would you have to start from the beginning again? No, I wouldn't say you have to start from the beginning again. To be honest, when I was in an agency and I was employing people for the agency role, when people came from in-house, I was really interested in them because, like I said, on the other side, they had a really good understanding of the business and the market, and they would also be really heavily involved in everything. And quite often, what we're looking to do is when you're in an agency, your clients are in-house, so it can be quite difficult if you've only ever had an agency background to speak at the same level and have the same understanding as what an in-house marketer is going through, because you haven't had that experience. But if you go from in-house to agency, then that's a bit of a dream for hiring managers and managers because they know that they understand what the clients are going through, and it's just a case of redirecting the skills that you've already got and changing it slightly how you've worked before. So no, you definitely wouldn't have to go back to the beginning. It's just a case of slightly different transferable skills. But I know that in-house skills are really beneficial for agencies. Yeah. Uh, okay, that's all the questions for now, I think. Is that right?
There's a question from Amy.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I put my hand up, so I was kind of invisible unless you see that.
Sorry, I was
Um,
looking at the chat and then I can see you now.
that's all good. Also, my picture's not up, so fair enough.
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly ask, in terms of brands that are very good at making the consumer the hero, could you give me like a top five of brands that you could look at to get a good example of what the experience is that you're going to get as a consumer?
I wish I had a top five off the top of my head because there's loads that do it really well. And now you've asked it, I've gone completely blank. Um, what I'll do is I'll practice what I preach actually, because one of the next things I've got to say is say I don't know more often. So I'm going to come back to you all with that. So hopefully Dan can facilitate that, but I can send you a list of ones that I think are doing a really good job. And yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, Patagonia is a really good one.
Mhm.
A lot of people talk about that because it has a mission. And I think whenever a brand can, so I think if somebody buys Patagonia, they're signaling something to their peers or they're signaling something to the rest of society, and they're wearing something more than just a piece of clothing. They're wearing their beliefs, they're wearing a commitment to helping the environment and being sustainable and favoring quality over um, kind of more disposable fashion and things like that. If you can do that and you could start to build a brand where it really means something to wear it or to buy it, and you can say, look, people like me buy Patagonia because we do this. You can help people become you can help people build up their, oh, I don't know the word, their presence within their own kind of personal group. And that's ultimately what people want. So Patagonia is a good example off the top of my head, but I'll think of more and I'll share it around with you.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. Essentially, you're asking people to aspire to a better version of themselves with your brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's it might be completely subjective. So I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, people want to move in different circles and they want to be taken seriously and they want to improve their social standing within their
Mm,
peers, whatever that might be. And if you can develop a brand that people want to show off to those peers and say, look, I'm aligning myself. Well, it's more that, like, if you've got an outlook on life, like you want to be, you're environmentally conscious, you want to be sustainable, then something like Patagonia can insert themselves into your brand narrative, your personal brand narrative, really easily. But if you don't have a mission like that, then it's really difficult for you to do.
absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much. I won't take up more time. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
that's all right.
Thank you.
That's fine.
You
I
have a
think there's
question,
another.
Chloe?
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say me?
Yep.
I was going to ask the same thing as Amy. So, great minds think alike there. Yeah, it would be good if you can send us a few brands that do really well. I was just looking at Patagonia's and I see exactly what you mean. The tagline is gifts for a good story. I was just going to ask as well though, could you maybe send us in the chat the name and author of the book that you mentioned
Yes, of course.
at the beginning? Because I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, of course. So Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. Yeah. I definitely recommend that. There you go. Put that in there.
Great, thank you so much.
That's okay. I feel like I've been rambling on already, so we haven't got loads of time left. We've got half an hour, Dan. Is that right? So we've got 8 minutes left. Is that right?
As much as you're willing to give, Graham, we could get
Okay.
you.
Well, we'll go for a bit longer. Well, I'll go onto a few more points. So I mentioned then, say, I don't know more often. So I was trying to think about things I've seen when managing marketing executives or people who've just started working in my companies. And one of the big things I'd say to any of you really is when you're starting out, saying I don't know more often is like the best thing to do. So quite often I think that when you're hired for a job or you take on a new client, whatever, if you're freelance or if you're working somewhere, if you join a company, people will often feel a bit insecure. They'll have a bit of imposter syndrome. They'll want to prove themselves ultimately. And that can lead to people talking when they should listen and rushing to answer a question on the spot that they don't have the answer to and, making a hash of it. When really the person who was asking the question really just wants the answer. And nobody expects you to be perfect. Nobody expects you to have every single answer at your fingertips, at your disposal instantly. It's always much better to say, you know what, I'm not sure, let me check on that, and I'll get you the proper details, and everyone's happy. The number of times I've seen kind of people tie themselves up in knots trying to answer something that they don't know because they think they have to. If they don't answer it, it'll make them look stupid. It's just not the case. It's just not worth doing. So I'd always say, listen more than you speak at first. Don't jump to kind of make yourself heard just out of insecurity or being nervous or wanting to, put a stamp on your new role. Listen and say, I don't know, and look for the answers and get the proper answers for people that people want. So that's the next tip I would give to people. If there's any questions about that, let me know. If not, I'll move on. I hope this is all right, me just flying through this. I just didn't think it was enough for you for a slide deck. So, okay, so we've talked about that. Okay, so a big one is I was thinking about. So I know a few of you have asked questions about how did you get to this level or moving up. So I thought that might be the case, and people might be interested in thinking about, well, when you're taking on more responsibility and moving up to different levels and starting to take on management responsibilities and things like that. I mean, it's the same with a lot of roles, really, but when you start to take on management and people management responsibilities as a marketer, your job can often completely change. your job role, and the skills that you need are a lot different to the skills that you needed to start with. So I thought I'd run through just some of those skills that I think are really useful for people. So, and again, if you have ambitions of being marketing managers, running teams, no matter how big, even specializing in something and having a team of 3 people under you, whatever, no matter what size it is. But if you have ambitions of taking on a more senior position in the future, then I'd really recommend working on these things ahead of time, because otherwise, and I've seen it loads of times where someone's been promoted, their job has completely changed and they're just not prepared for it. They were good at their job as a marketer, a marketing exec. Now becoming a manager, you have to have a completely different set of skills. So it's things like public speaking I would recommend working on, because as a marketing manager, or the more responsibility you get, the more people in the business you need to speak to. You often have to explain and describe the work that other people are doing. So you have to be good at articulating the work that other people are doing, even if you're not working on it yourselves. You have to speak to stakeholders who are often quite senior. So you might be talking, instead of to the chief marketing officer, you might suddenly be having conversations with the CEO or with the founder or with the head of operations. So you have to be a little bit more comfortable speaking like that. Often you might be speaking in front of bigger groups of people. So I'd always recommend to people, get as good as you can at public speaking if you have ambitions of going further and starting to manage people, even if it doesn't seem that obvious to start with. And then obviously, I think it's always worth understanding basics of people management, the basics of performance management and strategy and operations and things like that. But it's just worth thinking that, if you get a promotion tomorrow, the chances are you'll have some management responsibilities, and that can be quite a different world. So there's a really good book again that I'd recommend. I'll write it in here. You might have read it, but it's called The Making of a Manager by Julie Jouot, I think is how you might pronounce it. But she was an engineer at Facebook, so I mean it's quite good for marketers anyway, because you can kind of picture yourself in that world. So she was an engineer at, or a designer, I think, at Facebook. She got promoted, and it's all about what she learned as a manager. So I'd definitely recommend that. Any questions on that side of things? More of the managementy stuff? I don't know.
Yep, can I pop in?
Yes.
Brilliant. So just beforehand, you were talking about storytelling, and now it's more so on the public speaking side to sort of build that management sort of toolkit. I was wondering, say, how you might sort of apply those storytelling skills to like public speaking. So, like, say you're talking to the CEO or people higher up above you, and it's going for a really dull like presentation, like say, rattling off the KPIs for the next quarter. How would you make that engaging? Because you're not exactly talking to a customer in that sense. You're talking about the business as a whole. And
yeah. Brilliant question, and absolutely right. I mean, what you'll find is if you do any work on public speaking, one of the first things probably that you'll be told is, how can you turn it into a story? Because it's not just for marketing, this stuff. That storytelling principle is, if anybody wants to become an influencer of people, whether that's in the outside world when you're trying to influence and help people to take certain steps to meet their needs by buying a product or a service. But equally, you're trying to influence people in your company, and you're trying to explain why you're doing things. But again, yeah, that's right. People just switch off, don't they? If you're just rattling through bullet points, the best thing to do to make sure people are listening to you and actually ultimately take the steps that you want them to take is to package it up in a way that they really understand. And the first thing, as with any of this, to do is to understand your audience. And that doesn't have to just be the consumers in the outside world, but it's understanding the motivations of your peers and of your bosses. What do they want to get out of it? Everybody's got something that they want to get out of this stuff. So if you can tap into that, that's going to make them listen, and that's going to make them pay attention, and give you a much more solid footing to, get what you want out of it as well at the end of the day. And it's exactly the same as what I was saying about B2B. You know, the boss that you're pitching to or you're presenting to, they've got their own set of worries. They're probably being nagged by the CEO about how revenues are off target and things like that. So if you understand that, then you can focus your presentation more on the commercial side of things rather than the stuff that he's not going to be able to take necessarily to the founder and put in front of them. So yeah, absolutely 100%. If you do any work on public speaking, you'll find that storytelling is crucial.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Perfect. Cheers, Graham. And I know really valuable time to be able to give us all here and everything. Just wanted to check with everyone else before we let you run off. Is there any more questions anyone may have for Graham that they wanted to fire in before we let him go? Just give it a few seconds.
While you're waiting, I think the final thing that I would like to say is, so one of the big things that I took from this was that basically marketing, you can have the best ideas in the world with marketing, but if you can't execute them, then it's completely pointless. So a lot of the talk in marketing is around ideas and being creative and things like that. That's really important. You need great ideas to stand out. But if you don't give yourself the chance to execute them well, then it's a complete waste of time. So every company that I've been in could always do with more time and more energy spent on executing the campaign. So you've got an idea, give yourself enough time to do that justice, because too much of marketing is rushed, and that ultimately doesn't serve anyone well at all. So that's just a big thing that I've been thinking about recently. So I wanted to say that.
Amazing. We did have a question come into the chat there, which was, what advice would you give for getting into content marketing?
The first place I'll go to, I think, is I think it's called the Content Marketing Institute. It's a website that was basically like when content marketing first started taking off, kind of 2012, 2013, that was the authority on it, and it's continued to be. So I would read as much as you can on there about content marketing, because it's really useful. That's probably the best way to go to get you started.
Perfect. And then last one is, if people want to connect with you, Graham, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn's probably best, I'd say, if you've got LinkedIn. So it's just, I think it's in /in/Graham-Allchurch if you want to connect with me.
Amazing. Cheers. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for all of that. I'm sure you'll probably get a few connections coming through anyway now with a few more questions.
No, feel free. Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, really appreciate it. So yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Graham. Bye.
See ya.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And then for everyone in mine or Amy's mentor group, we're going to stick on this call. So let's hang fire for a little bit on here, and then I'll let Georgia and Joe's group move off and go on to the other Zoom.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
Anytime.
My group, we're going to take a quick break. So we're going to come back at 10:02, please. So if we can all join back onto our Zoom link in the afternoon from 10:02, that would be fantastic. And I'll see you guys there. Right. Thanks,
See you,
Georgia.
Georgia.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
No breaks for us, guys. We power through, we keep going.